as far as he had been informed, there was no advance warning whatsoever that these attacks were about to take place. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yes. There had been a general heightening of concern about the potential of terrorism over this summer, but no operational information that would have allowed us to have taken interdictive action against this specific event.
Does that suggest to you, Senator Graham, that there was an enormous intelligence failure here, that the massive resources of the U.S. intelligence community had no indication whatsoever about this highly sophisticated attack?
Well, what we do know is that there are several areas in which we have allowed our intelligence capability to degrade. We've allowed our human intelligence, spies, the people who can get inside the cells of a terrorist organization and give us information on motivations, intentions, capabilities that would allow us to interdict. We know that we have lost some of our eavesdropping capability, listening to what our potential adversaries are saying. We also know that we've not been making the investment in the analysis of the information that we collect so that we can use it effectively to avoid an incident like this. I believe this occasion will drive home the point that the only real protection against terrorism is the best possible intelligence, and that is the only intelligence that the citizens of the United States should be prepared to accept.
Senator Graham of Florida, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, thanks so much for joining us. And I want to go back to our congressional correspondent, Jonathan Karl. He's up on Capitol Hill, and I believe he has the junior senator from New York, Hillary Rodham Clinton, with him. John?
That's right, Wolf. We're joined here by Senator Clinton of New York. Senator Clinton, you've been on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue when something like this has happened, of course, when our embassies were bombed around the world. What do you think the president needs to come out and say when he comes out and addresses the nation shortly?
Well, I do have, some understanding of how difficult a time this is for the entire country, and we're all united behind the president. We are, as you saw earlier, with the legislative leadership of our country from both houses of Congress on both sides of the aisle, saying just as clearly as we can that this was an attack on America, and the President of the United States is our president, and we will support him in whatever steps he deems necessary to take, both in the retaliation that will be called for, and also in the very important work of rebuilding New York and the Pentagon. We can't let these evil acts in any way deter us from, making it clear that the United States is resolute, and we are going to support the president.
And are you getting any new information from law enforcement out of New York about just the extent of the loss in New York?
John, I don't think we even have an inkling of the devastation. We've not really had the kind of coverage at ground zero that would show what I'm hearing. Rubble sometimes up to your waist. Our firemen and police officers wading through dangerous circumstances, trying to see if there are any survivors. The numbers of people who are injured and who we fear are casualties, I think, will be terrible once they are fully understood. I'm very proud of New York City. The mayor, the police, the fire, all the people working in the emergency front lines have done a superb job. But, New York is the global city. It's the symbol of American leadership, and, these terrorists made a direct hit on who we are as a people, and New York has responded, and the national government has to stand behind us.
And Senator, you had told us earlier that you had spoken at length with former president, your husband. What is Mr. Clinton saying?
Well, he's outraged and, deeply angry, as I think all of us are, but is absolutely behind whatever this administration chooses to do, because he knows how important it is to speak with one voice on behalf of our country. This is something that he and I believe strongly, having been on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. And let me say, too, that our country not only has to retaliate directly against those who perpetrated this attack, but we have to make it very clear that we cannot permit any state, any government, any institution or individual to pursue terrorist aims that are directed at the United States or any country with impunity. So I'm hoping that this is the kind of dramatic, terrible catastrophe that unites the entire civilized world, so that it's not just an attack on the United States. It's an attack on everyone who cares about, freedom and dignity and justice and humanity.
Now, we're told that the Congress has never been evacuated before, not during the War of 1812, not during the Civil War. This was an extraordinary day. Of course, you are coming back. We had the display of unity on the steps of the Capitol. But is any business really going to be able to be done here? I mean, we've entered a new phase here, haven't we?
I don't think so, John. I think that clearly, because of the uncertainty that surrounded first the attacks in New York and then the attack on the Pentagon, it was prudent for these buildings to be evacuated, and I certainly went along with that, as did my staff. I think, though, tomorrow you'll see that the Senate and the House will be back in session. We will be debating a resolution that really expresses our very strong feelings of outrage about this. And then we're going to be getting down to the hard work of determining what we need to do. I've told my colleagues that this is the kind of devastating attack and loss of life that is almost beyond imagination. And, New York is going to need a lot of help. I was pleased that, we asked for an emergency declaration of disaster. I talked with the governor, and he's been extraordinarily involved in all of this. But we're going to need the federal government, the entire nation, to stand behind New York.
Okay, well, Senator Clinton, we thank you very much for joining us. I know you've got a busy time ahead of you. Thank you. And Wolf, back to you.
Thank you very much, John. Just to remind our viewers, we're standing by in about 24 minutes or so. President Bush is expected to be in the Oval Office to address the American public on this tragic day in U.S. history here in Washington at the Pentagon early this morning. An American Airlines Flight 777, a Boeing 757 en route from Washington Dulles Airport to Los Angeles was diverted after being hijacked and was slammed in, crashed in to the Pentagon earlier this morning. Paula, this has been a traumatic day in New York as well. Paula's on.
Yeah, and some of the images, Wolf, we're about to see again will be forever etched in our consciousness. The whole life of the city, as Jeff Greenfield said, changed forever at 8:45 in the morning. You're actually looking at the second attack on the South Tower of the World Trade Center there. The attacks were 18 minutes apart. We're going to show you images of thousands and thousands of people leaving these buildings that are on fire. Some 50,000 people work in this World Trade Center complex. Many of the roads and bridges were closed today by the city, causing people to have to find their way home on foot. Mayor Giuliani now has declared the lower part of Manhattan off limits to civilians at least until Thursday. All New York City public and parochial schools are closed tomorrow. All businesses below 14th Street in New York City will be closed tomorrow. Both the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones will be closed tomorrow. Airports throughout the country will be closed at least through noon, although there are some conflicting accounts of that. And Jeff, as I stand here on this balcony night and look back at the smoke continuing to billow from the wreckage of the towers, it is
the smoke is billowing.
It makes you sick.
The only sound are church bells ringing. There's not a single sound of a commercial airline in the skies, which usually fill the night sky, and the Empire State Building, which is usually lit up at night, is dark in morning. It's a scene as a lifelong New Yorker, I could not have imagined in my worst nightmare.
I think one of the more poignant images this evening was watching our Congress sing God Bless America.
It actually was one of the more affecting things. You got a sense that the political community, which so often offers prepared statements and goes in a partisan battle, this time they are simply overwhelmed by what happened, and that was a kind of small effort at affirmation.
What happens tomorrow?
I think the numbness is really going to start hitting, and so will the casualty lists.
We have to confirm now that the New York Police Department is saying that at least 78 members of its department are missing tonight. A union representing firefighters here in New York City is saying of the 400 firefighters who were initially called to the scene, 200, Jeff, are presumed dead tonight.
And that's only the people that have been counted by an official city agency. If 200 firefighters perished in the collapse of one of those towers. This is why I think tomorrow is going to be, as I said, a tougher day than today.
We had earlier a gentleman on who was working on the 65th floor of the North Tower, the World Trade Center, and he said this is just becoming real to him for the first time. But I can imagine across the country this sense of shock really will turn to outrage.
And I think in terms of the impact of this, when people wake up tomorrow, when we begin getting the casualty lists, people are going to want to strike as hard as they can, and the question will be when and at whom.
We're going to go back to Washington now, where Wolf Blitzer is standing by for another update. Wolf.
We've heard so far, Paula, from the congressional leadership, from members of President Bush's cabinet, from the Defense Department, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. On this horrific day throughout the United States, we're looking at these pictures earlier today at the Pentagon when an American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757 en route from Washington Dulles Airport to Los Angeles, was commandeered and was forced to slam into the Pentagon. We do not know the number of killed and injured, although the number is expected to be very, very high. I want to show our viewers the extraordinary newspaper editions of both the Washington Post and the Washington Times are now coming out with special editions. Here is the headline, "Horror," in a special edition of the Washington Times. Similar edition of the Washington Post was put out today as well. On this day, we're standing by. In about less than 20 minutes, President Bush will be in the Oval Office to address the American public. Bill Hemmer is in Atlanta. He now has more. Bill?
Well, thank you. So much of our concentration for our coverage today has been focused on Washington and New York City, but there's another element to the story in Somerset County. That's in western Pennsylvania, southeast of Pittsburgh. United Airlines Flight 93, bound from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, went down in a field. CNN's David Mattingly, one of the first on the scene earlier today, now joins us with a live update from what's happening from that perspective. David, what do you have for us this evening as night has fallen there in western Pennsylvania?
Well, Bill, we are standing right in the heart of farm country in western Pennsylvania. I'm surrounded by cornfields, green pastures, and rolling hills. But tonight, this normally peaceful setting is teeming with emergency personnel, hundreds of emergency personnel and state troopers. Their mission tonight to lock down the crash site of the United 757 right here in this area. The plane went down in an old strip mining area. Views of the crash site indicate an impact crater about 10 feet wide and 10 feet deep and 15 feet wide. Officials report only small pieces of debris at the site, excuse me, giving you an indication of what kind of force was behind this crash. Now, residents say they were watching news coverage, and you can imagine their horror watching the news coverage in New York and Washington, D.C., and suddenly hearing a tremendous explosion here. And the plane crashed with such a powerful force that people miles away say their houses were shaken. The school a couple of miles away, windows were shaken. Students and teachers who were watching also on television at the time were reportedly very upset. Now, this evening, Governor Tom Ridge surveyed the crash site, and he called on Pennsylvanians for their prayers, their blood donations, and to volunteer their skills in this time of emergency.
We'd like to provide Pennsylvania's support if called upon to do so. And my plea to all Pennsylvanians is to, first of all, for your prayers. Secondly, for your blood. I think that the Red Cross would appreciate volunteers.
There is a great deal of speculation here at the crash site regarding the reporting of a 911 call that reportedly originated from the hijacked plane and was taken by a 911 operator in a neighboring county. Well, at this time, there's no confirmation here at the scene of the accuracy of that report. The FBI has reportedly, again, taken control of that tape, but tonight will not confirm or deny anything regarding that tape. So obviously, possibly a key piece of evidence also being looked at in regards to this crash site. Bill.
All right, David. David Mattingly on the scene there in Somerset County, western Pennsylvania. Again, 38 passengers on board, 5 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. And the indication David was given earlier by eyewitnesses who saw that plane go down, it appears that plane went directly into the earth again earlier today, 10:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll continue to canvass the country, and it should be pointed out that a number of Americans in many major cities across the country, and even in the small towns, still somewhat disturbed and in a state of shock over what we're seeing throughout the country today. Here in the city of Atlanta, it is quite unusual to see a heavy commuter city like Atlanta to have so few cars traveling on its downtown streets right around rush hour. But that was the scene we saw in this southern city today, and a number of malls indeed closed as well, as people again continue to react to what we have seen throughout the day here. The president will speak in 15 minutes time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time from the White House, and certainly CNN will have live coverage when that happens. Back to Wolf now in Washington. Wolf.
Thank you, Bill. And this statement just released from the Office of Personnel Management, the federal government here in Washington. Federal agencies in Washington, D.C. Will be open for business as usual tomorrow, Wednesday, under what is called an unscheduled leave policy. That means federal employees may take leave without prior approval, but federal agencies will be open in Washington. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, is over at the White House getting ready, like the rest of us, to hear the president, but he has a guest. John?
Wolf, among those here helping the president prepare in the White House respond to this tragedy, Joe Albaugh, a close personal friend of the president, who is the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Tell us, sir, if you will, very difficult to get any numbers on those injured and killed, both at the Pentagon and up in New York. Do you have any preliminary estimates, and what can you tell us about the federal response to help with the rescue effort?
It's premature for any numbers, John. I can tell you, I can tell the country that we're doing what we need to do. Either our teams are already on the ground in New York and obviously here at the Pentagon, or they're on their way and will be there overnight.
4 aircraft, commercial aircraft hijacked in a single day.
Right.
The American people watching the horror of this have to ask their federal government how.
Well, it is a stunning incident. It really is. The how and why will come later. Right now we're concerned with the recovery. Those folks that are missing, their loved ones tonight that won't be home, those are the folks we need to keep in our minds and in our hearts. We'll get to them as quickly as we can.
As you and other members of the President's cabinet meet here at the White House, one announcement from Secretary Mineta, your colleague, the Transportation Secretary, look for no more curbside check-in, look for more security checks at airports and at train stations. Has the country, has our freedom to move about forever changed today?
I'm not sure that it has. For the short term, it will, and I think most Americans will appreciate that. They will understand it. They will leave for their airports or railroads earlier. It's the right attitude to have at this time.
I know your focus is on the emergency responses.
Absolutely.
Have you been in these briefings today? Any indications at all that the United States government has any firm evidence of who is responsible for this?
That's not my department. I'm focused on the recovery right now. We have others that are focusing on that as we speak.
And lastly, I know you need to get back inside the White House. What numbers are we talking about? How many people from the federal government and people that are at your disposal are responding to these?
Well, we have over 5,000 people at FEMA, and I know everyone is deployed as we speak right now at some part of the country.
All right, Joe Albaugh,
We'll
Director.
do all we can.
Thank you very much, sir. We know you're very busy tonight. Thanks for joining us. Please keep us posted. Wolf, back to you now.
Thank you very much, John. And I want to bring back CNN's Nick Robertson. He's in Kabul, Afghanistan, where he's been reporting for us via video phone. Nick, tell us the latest. We heard those explosions earlier tonight. What is going on right now?
Well, Wolf, it's about 10 to 5 in the morning, daybreak here in Kabul. We'll certainly get a better idea of the extent of the damage caused by those explosions we heard overnight. A little under an hour ago, we heard from a senior Taliban official who confirmed that the city was attacked. He said it was attacked by 2 helicopters, firing rockets, hitting an ammunition dump in the city. He said that the helicopters were sent by the Northern Alliance. That is the forces that the Taliban are battling to gain control of the last 5% of Afghanistan. The Northern Alliance said that they were responsible for those attacks. Northern Alliance very, very upset with the Taliban at the moment. At the weekend, their senior commander was the subject of a suicide assassination attempt that the Northern Alliance blamed the Taliban for. So in the civil war that's going on here, things are very tense at this time. An audacious attack. One analyst described the attack this evening. The front line of the Northern Alliance, some 40 or 50 miles from this capital, they flew helicopters in under the cover of darkness, switched on searchlights when they got into the city, and fired missiles at the city. In a few hours, Wolf, we expect the United Nations agencies here and several international diplomats here in the city to consider their position. We understand the United Nations often at times like this will withdraw its staff. In a few hours, we'll find out about that. Wolf?
Nick Robertson, our man in Kabul, Afghanistan, thanks so much once again for joining us. Stand by. I want to bring in right now Paul Bremer, the former U.S. ambassador for counterterrorism. You spent many, many years studying these kinds of developments, perhaps not as horrendous as what has happened in the United States today. Whose fingerprints do you suspect are over this operation?
Well, as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee said earlier, it's early to make any conclusions, but there basically are four groups that you can imagine having the capabilities of doing this. Bin Laden is certainly one. The others would be some of the more radical Palestinian groups, which might be able to do this. And then, of course, there are two states, Iraq and Iran. And I think that's the list of possible suspects for the moment. And you've eliminated homegrown U.S. sponsorship the way that occurred at Oklahoma City. Yeah, I don't see that. That doesn't look to me to be the kind of operation those people have done. They're not suicide people. They like to get away. This is on a scale which goes way beyond anything, I think, that's domestic. Now, we spoke earlier in the day, and you, of course, chaired a commission on counterterrorism that released findings earlier in the year. A lot of speculation about an intelligence failure that could have been predicted. In fact, when I spoke to you earlier, and I've interviewed you earlier, there has been a lapse in intelligence gathering, the human intelligence gathering, in other words, running agents or spies within these terror cells. Right, and as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee said, I think it's the most important problem we need to address now. The objective of a counterterrorist policy is to prevent Americans getting killed. It's not the retaliation, it's to prevent the attacks. And if you're going to prevent the attacks, you have to know ahead of time about them. And the only way to do that is to have a spy among the terrorists who's willing to talk to you. Our commission looked at this rather carefully and concluded that we've got some guidelines, some rules that were established in the CIA in the mid-90s that have the effect of deterring case agents from basically trying to engage terrorist spies. And I think this kind of attack shows, again, the importance of intelligence, the importance of taking a very aggressive look at human intelligence. Well, explain to us why, theoretically, the CIA would put these kinds of rules in effect. Does it make any sense whatsoever not to try to penetrate these terrorist operations? My own view is that these rules do not make any sense, that in fact if you're going to get good intelligence on terrorists, you're going to have to deal with some very unsavory people. The rules were put into effect because there were concerns at the agency at the time that it was associating the United States with people who might violate human rights or be criminals. Well, I sort of say, yeah, of course, that's what terrorists are. And if you're going to get intelligence about terrorists, you're going to have to deal with terrorists. That's a fact of life. And if you're running these unsavory individuals in these terrorist cells, you're presumably paying them for their cooperation. And as a result, I take it what you're suggesting, the CIA doesn't want to be in the position of having to tell Congress that they're paying these unsavory terrorists? Well, I think that's probably what led to these guidelines being imposed in 1995. I think that in the wake of this kind of an attack, we're going to have to take a close look at that, and my guess is that those guidelines will be changed. But what we have to do now is find out who did it, and then we have to prepare a retaliation that would, I hope, be the most vigorous military retaliation we can against the people who did it and any governments that were in any way contacted with this, including, if it's in Afghanistan, the Taliban. And I think that the day of sort of talking about terrorism is over now. We've seen the catastrophe that unfortunately many of us have been worried about. It's happened. Tens of thousands of people have been injured and maybe killed, and now's the time for real action. If the retaliatory strike does take place, and everyone assumes eventually it will, won't that, as some critics will say, just simply lead to more terrorism, the cycle of violence, as the State Department, and you once worked there, likes to call it? Well, I think you have to be careful not to talk yourself into a Hamlet syndrome when fighting terrorism. You can always make an argument against military retaliation because it's going to lead to something else. You can always say that diplomacy won't really work because other countries won't support you. You can say that economic sanctions don't work because other countries will violate them. And you can go down the whole list of options that are there and persuade yourself that none of them make any sense, and at the end you do nothing. And effectively, if you do nothing, then this is the kind of thing that happens. And I think the American public will, when they take a deep breath, want and indeed deserve a very strong reaction to this. And I think it will be interesting to see how many of our allies who are today giving statements of full support, how many of them are really going to be with us when the time comes for retaliation. Then's when we'll know who our real friends are. All right. Ambassador Bremer, it was kind of you to join us. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Let's go back to New York, and CNN's Aaron Braun is standing by. Aaron?
Well, thank you. We are waiting for the president whose day began in Sarasota, Florida, where he was going to make a speech on education. He then went to Shreveport, Louisiana, and then to Nebraska, to where the Strategic Air Command is based, and finally back to Washington. There are, it seems to us, moments in a president's term: the Challenger for President Reagan, the Gulf War for President Bush, Oklahoma City for President Clinton, now this, where the country looks to a president for information and reassurance. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, I expect we'll hear both today.
Expect you will, Aaron, on a day that defies description. The president, we are told, wants to deliver a message of, quote, resolve and reassurance to the American people. Mr. Bush back at the White House now for a couple of hours. He has been briefed by the vice president and members of his national security team, the key members of the Bush cabinet here as well, trying to direct the federal government's response to this crisis. Mr. Bush will address the American people, as you mentioned, from the Oval Office here at the White House after a day that began in Florida, saw him go to a military installation in Louisiana, then a second military installation in Nebraska. All this as he tried to stay in touch with the national security team, and all this as the White House, the Secret Service, and the military decided whether or not it was safe to bring the president back to Washington. They very much wanted the political statement of the president returning to the White House to try to dispel any notion that this was a country under siege. Still, this is a key defining moment for this president, 8 months into office. We're just a few minutes away from hearing him on this day of tragedy in the United States address the American people from the Oval Office.
And indeed, that political message that the government is functioning, that despite all that's happened, was repeated again and again by officials in Washington. Late today, I remember hearing Karen Hughes. It was almost the first thing she said. She was reassuring the American people that their government is running despite it all. This is the government continuation plan in the textbooks in Washington, D.C. This is a very young administration, and this is a major test, John.
That's right, Aaron, and at times there is a conflict, if you will, between the security arrangements and the political calculations. The president being kept out of Washington, the key leaders in Congress being taken to a secure bunker outside of Washington, all that part of a protocol. Go ahead, Aaron.
John, I'm sorry. I just want to tell our viewers that what they're looking at is a fire that continues to burn, and I assume this is a continuation until I'm told otherwise, at the Pentagon in Washington. These pictures that you're looking at now. John, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Quite all right, Aaron. The picture's quite a devastating day, the scenes we are seeing today. What I was saying is there is at times a conflict between the security concerns and the political calculation. White House officials very much saying throughout the day they wanted to get the president back to Washington for the signal that sent. At the same time, there are a series of protocols they follow when they reach a full high terrorism alert, as the government reached today, not only for the president's security, but for everybody. The First Lady was out in public. She was taken to a safe location, just brought back to the White House this evening. President Bush now, though, meeting with his national security team in the Oval Office for what has to be an amazingly anguishing moment for him, but we are told he will deliver a statement offering reassurance and resolve to the American people, and promising once again, as he has twice already today, to dedicate all the resources of the United States government and to call on all our allies around the world to find out who is responsible for these attacks today, and the president will promise to bring them to justice. Aaron?
John, you know, this day it has been very long for all of us here, and we look back, you can still, I'm not sure you can see it on the TV, but we can still see the smoke coming off the Trade Center. 3 buildings have collapsed. These extraordinary pictures we've shown you of the planes as they literally hit that building is one of those images that none of us, and we suspect none of you, will ever forget.
And Aaron, you know, given the horror and the scale of the tragedy that we've witnessed, I'm going to pose this question to Jeff. You wonder if anyone can deliver a speech that is as big as what has happened.
That's exactly right, I think, Paula, that, you know, when President Reagan gave a speech after Challenger, that was an awful day. 6 people died. It was a terrible accident. Even Oklahoma City, horrible as that was the contained act of one madman. This attack on the United States, which is not an overstatement, in some way makes words almost, it's too much of a burden for almost any speech to bear. Yes, we want reassurance. Yes, we want resolve. Sure, we're going to get it. At the end of the day, you know, we still don't know how many people are dead because they can't even go into that rubble 2 miles from here.
And, you know, Mayor Giuliani, Jeff, late today, talked in terms of a week, maybe a week, before we really know how many people have perished in that building. It is a long time to wait. There were a lot of phone messages when I was downstairs earlier from people wanting to know the answer to that question. How many people have died today? And that is simply unknowable.
And you know what,
It
Aaron,
is unknowable.
that makes that so hard to answer is that city officials can't even get in within that perimeter area. There is still debris falling from these collapsed buildings, and there are an untold number of people still trapped.
And we know that there are a couple of hundred firefighters who are missing. There are 78 New York police officers who are missing. And nobody down there, 30 or so blocks away from where we are, wants to see that number go up. So they will wait until the building is as safe as it might get. It will never be safe to go in there. There will always be risk, but the risk will mitigate a bit over time, and then they will slowly start to go into the building, start to search for who may still be there.
And
but
that's
that is
why,
days away.
And that's why but that's why the president's speech tonight has such a burden upon it. The stark reality of that makes what the president has to say tonight as difficult, probably as difficult a speech as any president, at least since Roosevelt's day of infamy speech.
Probably since Roosevelt. This is one of those moments. The president now just a few moments away from addressing the nation from the Oval Office. He has not been back in Washington for very long. But now, from the Oval Office, the president to talk about the extraordinarily horrible events of September 11th.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices. Secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you. Good night, and God bless America.
President George W. Bush from the Oval Office tonight, almost, not quite, but almost 12 hours since the attack on the World Trade Center, the first plane hitting the Trade Center just a little bit past 8:45 this morning. The president said there is a quiet, unyielding anger in the country. We were attacked, the United States, he said, because the country is a beacon of freedom. And in talking about the efforts to find the people responsible, he said we, the country, will not only go after those who did it, but those who harbor them. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, joins us. John.
Aaron, the president also calling this a mass murder, and we've been unable to get any estimates on those killed and injured. The president using the term thousands when discussing those killed today in the attack. That last point you were just making could prove critical. The president saying the United States government will make no distinction between the terrorists who carried out this attack and those who harbor them. Just before the president was speaking, I checked in with a couple of congressional sources who are telling CNN that in private briefings today, key members of Congress were told by senior administration officials that the administration is, quote, confident, based on the early evidence in this investigation, quote, confident that Osama bin Laden is responsible for this attack. Now, in those briefings, we're told the administration did not say that with a certainty, but did say it was confident, that it had hard evidence in hand, that the investigation was continuing. That could be a significant thing to follow up in the days ahead based on the remarks of the president from the Oval Office to the American people tonight. Aaron.
Mr. bin Laden has been an elusive character out there for a long time now. I guess he is on notice today. I think the president pretty clearly made that known. But he has not been easy to find, Mr. bin Laden, has he?
He has not been easy to find, and there has been a great deal of criticism, some from the Congress, some from members of this president's cabinet now during the prior administration, that the United States government was not doing enough on the second point, not only to try to go after Mr. bin Laden, but to take action against those governments that provided him sanction. That a key distinction the president making tonight, obviously, as we learn more about the investigation in the days ahead and the outreach from this government to allied governments around the world and perhaps to other governments suspected of giving aid and comfort to Mr. bin Laden in the next few days as we assess the grim death toll and those injured in the days ahead. That's something else to keep an eye on as well. Aaron.
John, thank you. John King, our senior White House correspondent. Paula?
And earlier on, Aaron, we were talking with Jeff Greenfield about the challenge of the president delivering a speech where the toll has been so enormous. Jeff, your reaction to the president's words tonight?
They are the words that he had to speak. But again, the question is, when the president says, it may have shaken the foundations of a building, but it did not shake our foundations in ourselves. That's what a president must tell us, and it's what we want to believe. But I venture to say in the country today, there are a lot of shaken people, not just in this city. And I think the key is not so much the words that were said tonight, but what happens in the days and weeks ahead. How different a country are we going to find? How much are our movements going to be restricted by the need for more security? The only other point I want to underscore John King's point, Richard Holbrooke on our air said if the Taliban in Afghanistan is shielding bin Laden and he is the one responsible, they must feel the full force of our response. When the president said we will make no distinction between the terrorists and those who harbor him, I think that's very much the point he was making.
There was a report in an Arab newspaper that is actually based in London, where the editor actually indicated that Osama bin Laden had telegraphed this attack as long as 3 weeks ago. If that is true, one could expect there to be some political fallout from this.
Peter Bergen, who interviewed bin Laden 3 or 4 years ago, who was on air earlier, made the point that every time bin Laden has been involved in an attack on American interests or personnel, he has in fact telegraphed, as he did presumably with the USS Cole and other events. And he said bin Laden, who once targeted American soldiers, has now changed his view. Any American civilian, by virtue of being a taxpayer, bin Laden thinks, is complicit in what he regards as America's misdeeds. So, you know, that's why the speech tonight is just the first of a very long chain of events whose end we can't possibly predict.
Meanwhile, as we all know, New Yorkers wake up to a completely different landscape here tomorrow. Public schools closed, the stock market closed, all flights in this country, domestic, international, postponed at least until noon tomorrow, maybe even longer than that. Let's check back in with Wolf Blitzer, who also has some more insights right now.
Paula, I'm sitting in the Washington Bureau, as is Cardinal Roger Mahony, the Archbishop of Los Angeles. He joins us now. Cardinal Mahony, explain to our viewers what has happened today.
Well, I think the very soul of our country has been severely tested. There has obviously been a great wound inflicted upon us. And there's great uncertainty in people's minds. There's great anguish. There's great outcry. But there's a numbness and an emptiness. And I think when the president called upon us to reach into the inner depths of our being and find that source of light, I think he has given us the insight we need. We in this country are people who, by and large, believe in God. We are people who believe in prayer. And I think this is the time, this is the moment when we need to rally our sense of belief, our unity as a people who believes in trust in God.
And as we speak, Cardinal Mahony, we're taking a look at some videotape of the devastation at the Pentagon, not very far from where we're sitting right now. When parents will try to explain this evil that occurred today, how should they explain that to their children?
Well, I think this is a precious moment for parents and families this evening, because I think children will be particularly terrified as they see all of these horrible things unfold on television. I think parents need to gather their children. I think they need to gather the family. And in whatever faith tradition they might have, they need to link today with their scripture, with the Bible, the Hebrew scriptures, the Quran, whatever belief system they have. This is an excellent moment to do it. I think also something that's significant today, as I drove over to the CNN headquarters tonight, and the city is quite dark. It occurred to me that terrorists live in darkness, and their evil deeds, they do not wish those to be seen. So I'd say to parents tonight, gather your family, get out a candle. If you have a candle, light the candle as a family, and let the children in the family see the hope that is in that light. And I'm hopeful that the president is going to declare a day of prayer this week, hopefully for all of us to come together in our various faith communities. But just as the terrorists tried through darkness to bring down the spirit of our people, I'd love to see people light a candle in their home, maybe put one in the front window. Let that light of hope and trust in God's providence in our lives, let that shine across our country tonight and tomorrow.
Cardinal Roger Mahony, the Archbishop of Los Angeles, thank you so much for those words. And I just want to throw back to our Aaron Brown in New York, but to remind our viewers that first crash occurred almost exactly some 12 hours ago when that first plane crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. Aaron?
Well, thank you, and particularly thanks to the Cardinal. Those were extraordinary words, and much needed, I think, to remind us how we might deal with the issues here with our children. I think all of us at some point today have wondered how we are going to explain this to them. Larry Eagleburger has been a part of a number of administrations in the diplomatic positions. He's, I think, familiar to many of you as well. He joins us from Charlottesville, Virginia, I believe. Again, good evening to you, sir. It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
I want to go back a few hours to a conversation you had, because if I remember it correctly, you talked specifically about two things that came up in the president's statement. One is that we need to be proactive. The country needs to be proactive in attacking terrorist groups before they attack the United States. And this is the point the president made, that it is not enough to go after the terrorists. You also must go after those who harbor the terrorists. Heartened by the president's words tonight?
Very much so. I thought it was a superb speech. I'll tell you something. I think we're all going to find that the American people are much tougher than some of the commentary tonight that I've heard would imply. And if you have the leadership that I think the president demonstrated tonight, and if we carry out the words he said, and we do in fact act hard against not only the terrorists but those who have housed them, I think we will find that we have struck a real blow for beginning the end of this terrorist tragedy that's taken over the world for so long. We won't win it all at once, but if we now really start to take seriously the words that the president said, both in terms of attacking the terrorists and those who mother them, I think we can begin to see this thing turning around. And I think the American people will be totally in support of that.
Secretary Eagleburger, what is it that you've heard from commentators or anyone else that made that perked your ear there, that suggested the American people did not have the resolve or did not have the toughness to deal with this?
Well, I don't want to carry it too far, but what I've heard is, you know, they're all shaken. There's some implications that we're not going to sort this out too quickly. All I'm saying is, whether we've been shaken or not, if you watched what went on in New York City today, and particularly the police and the firemen, but also average New Yorkers, in the ways in which they responded to try to take care of each other, I was in fact very much impressed by their guts and their ability to deal with these things in a rational way. And I think it showed a great deal about the city of New York, which has not always been my favorite place. And it also showed a great deal about the American people. And I think you're going to find that we are going to be really prepared to back the president all the way now. In this sense, I do think it's like Pearl Harbor, because it's Pearl Harbor that led us all to come together to defend ourselves against the Japanese. I think this is Pearl Harbor in a sense, in bringing us now to look at this terrorist issue as in fact we should look at it, which is, if we don't deal with it now, it will be so much worse as the years go on.
Secretary Eagleburger, thank you. It's good to talk to you again. If I could just a second, one thing he said, of all of the images that we've seen in the 12 hours that we've been here, it is a scene of New Yorkers calmly evacuating the area, very slowly walking, no panic, no screaming, helping one another, that has stayed with us. It is not the most dramatic picture, but it is one of the most telling pictures we have seen about how people respond in moments of extraordinary crisis. Paula?
I'll also tell you, Arian, the story that hasn't been told is the generosity of the spirit of the New York people. I mean, a lot of New Yorkers get a bad rap here, but the fact is there was a plea made for people to donate blood, and at many area hospitals there were as many as 4 to 5 hour waits.
Yeah.
People lining up.
This is a city that has taken a number of terrible hits in recent time, but in moments like this, it is truly the best of us that we saw today. And I don't think it's simply New Yorkers. I think we would have seen this most anywhere else. But they're a tough group out there below us, 30 or 20 floors, and they handled an awful, awful experience today with extraordinary calm, to which I think we all are grateful.
All right, right now I'm going to check in with James Kallstrom, who was formerly of the FBI. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well,
Sir, can you explain to the American public how it is possible that 4 commercial airliners were hijacked in a several-hour period?
I don't think we can explain that right now, Paula. I mean, we'll be answering those questions in the future. I can tell you this, that everyone in law enforcement and the intelligence agencies prayed and hoped that something like this would never happen. It has happened. I thought the President gave a great speech tonight. I was particularly impressed. It's a bit redundant from the other speakers, but his discussion of there will be no difference between those that committed this horrendous act and those that supported, harbored, assisted this horrific act. I think that's a very, very key point. And as the days roll out, the United States, this great country we all live in, and the heroism that you saw on the streets of New York, I saw that day in and day out in smaller tragedies, and I'm sure we see that throughout the United States. But as the days wear on, the United States and the Allies, if they carry out what the President said, we'll be far better off for it.
If you would, sir, though, would you come back to the vulnerability that was exposed today? What is the significance that 2 planes were successfully hijacked from Boston? What is the significance of the fact that all 4 of these flights were cross-country flights?
Well, I mean, I think we can read into that, Paula. I don't know the answers. It would seem like the interesting and tragic thing is that people would give their lives that could also fly sophisticated airplanes, that they apparently could get on these airplanes through generally good screening techniques. I heard one report that they were carrying knives or box cutters, and that could be.
How do you get through security with box cutters on you?
Well, I'm not going to go into all the different ways that could happen, and I don't know exactly what happened. I don't think now is the time to try to figure that out. Obviously, people want to know that answer, but I think now let's concentrate on the dead, the families, those that are still alive in the rubble in New York, in the Pentagon, out in Pennsylvania. Let's work like crazy to find out who did this. That's what's going on right now. And let's bring those folks to justice. And let's do what the President said. Let's see no difference between those that did it and those that helped it, harbored it, assisted it. Let's do that.
If you would walk us through the process that begins tomorrow. Rescue workers still are not able to penetrate that perimeter area surrounding the World Trade Center because of falling debris, because of smoke. Walk us through what we can expect tomorrow.
More of the same. I mean, I think everybody is 24 hours a day now. I mean, I saw reports just a while back that close to 200 New York City firemen are missing. 40 or 50 New York City police officers are missing. And certainly all the people that are in the World Trade Center are missing. So there's been a valiant attempt already to save lives, and that'll continue.
All right, Mr. Kallstrom, thank you so much for your time this evening. Right now, Aaron and I are going to hand this back to Wolf, who continues to stand by in Washington.
Thank you very much, Paula. And I want to report what a senior administration official is telling CNN, that the President's National Security Council will be convening once again shortly to review what has happened and presumably to discuss some various options about what is happening. President Bush, of course, will be participating together with his National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State Colin Powell, the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, and the Vice President, Dick Cheney. When we get some information on that, of course, we'll report that as well. But I want to bring in CNN's Greta Van Susteren. You were at National Airport early this morning when that American Airlines Flight 77 slammed into the Pentagon. What did you see, Greta?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I was on a flight on a runway to go to New York. It was canceled because they said 2 planes planes had run into the building in New York, so they canceled our flight. I got off the plane. I headed back to my car to come back to work. I was on the rooftop of National Airport's parking lot, which is about 2 blocks from the Pentagon, and I heard something funny. No, first my husband said to me, "We better get out of here," and I thought it was a little bit strange. My husband's acting a little bit like an alarmist. I turned back to look at him. I heard something funny. I looked over his shoulder. I saw something. I'm not sure quite what it was, but low level. Then all of a sudden there was silence. Then there was a kaboom, and then smoke came billowing out, and I knew that it was the Pentagon. The Pentagon's about 2 blocks, of course, from National Airport, hidden behind some buildings. And there was just smoke and debris flying all over, coming up in the air. Obviously a very terrible sight.
And we're taking a look at some live pictures right now. You can see the fires still continuing at the Pentagon now, some 12 hours later. What was your first thought, though, when you heard that kaboom? Did you have any sense what was really going on?
At that point, I knew there was a big problem. I knew it was the Pentagon, and I knew that something horrible had happened, and I could see the magnitude of it. And it was really one of terror, because we had no idea, was there more coming? Was National Airport next? It was only 2 blocks away. Cell phones went down. I tried 2 cell phones, was having difficulty getting through. I finally did get through to CNN, but the traffic was tied up. You heard plenty of sirens and almost no information till I got in the car and did find out what happened. And always, in addition to having to witness this, several hours later, of course, I learned that someone who I know quite well, Barbara Olson, who's appeared on this network a number of times, and whose husband is the Solicitor General of the United States, was one of the fatalities on the airplane. So obviously, and many other people, of course, are suffering tonight, but that, of course, is even more dismaying.
And all of us, of course, who've worked at CNN knew Barbara Olson very, very well, and our hearts and our condolences go out to her family and Ted Olson, the Solicitor General. A very, very sad day for the Olsons, of course, for the entire country. Greta, put on your legal hat now. What is going to happen legally right now? Walk us through what we can expect.
Well, first, obviously, I can't tell you what the President of the United States is going to do, but there seems to be at least something the country is going to do. The President obviously has indicated the country is going to do something. But assuming that action is done, something is done, the President, there's also the possibility of some sort of legal remedy. It's not much of a remedy, but you can it has happened in the past is that we've gone over and nabbed terrorists, brought them back to this country, and tried them for terrorist acts here on American soil or for acts that they've committed against American buildings overseas. And of course, they can get the death penalty if proven guilty. What's interesting about this and what people should know is that oftentimes it's done in a conspiracy charge, and if you have any involvement in a conspiracy, for instance, you just stick your toe in the water of a conspiracy, you're in for the whole thing. So a lot of people can be brought into a conspiracy for almost just a minor act aiding the conspiracy, not just the ones who are responsible for planning and causing the deaths, but if you in any way just assisted a little bit, you're in for the conspiracy and you could face the death penalty.
All right, Greta Van Susteren, thank you very much. Stand by. I want to go back to New York. Aaron, Paula, and Jeff are standing by. Guys, take it over.
Well, thank you. It is another day in Asia already. The Nikkei is open, the Japanese stock market. It is already down 5.5% to a 17-year low. This is not unexpected. It is the kind of thing that happens when there is instability in the world, and there is instability in the world today, certainly in our world today. Jeff, it seems like days ago that we began this. Tell me where you are right now.
I was thinking about waking up this morning in a city that was going to have a primary election for mayor and other city offices, in a country that was worried about an economy that might or might not be flattening, kids back at school for the first month, at a time when the big issues, when big events, when horrible events seemed behind us. That was the political climate we've all thought we'd been in. And we're going to wake up tomorrow in just a completely different city and a completely different country emotionally.
We wake up to a city tomorrow where the majority of the businesses below 14th Street, down towards the World Trade Center, are shut. Public schools closed, parochial schools closed, all private schools closed. No flights coming in or out of this country. Stock market closed. It's a new reality. And as Jeff expressed earlier on, I think you said it pretty pointedly, our luck ran out.
It is, when I walked off here for a short break around 6:30 or so, I thought about my daughter, who's 12 and a half, and I wondered if she, in her school, was taken into the gymnasium as I was in November of 1963, when President Kennedy was assassinated. I remember everything about that moment, and I wondered if she will remember every bit of that moment as well. I wondered.
December 7th, 1941,
Yeah.
September 11th, 2001. I think this date may well have been engraved.
Larry King Live is coming up in just a moment. Before we go to Larry, we want to take you back to one of those moments today. It happened at the Capitol. Democrats, Republicans, senators, representatives gathered on the steps of the Capitol to show that the government was running, that they were there, and the country was strong.
Tonight with the light from above.